Kia ora, team, welcome back. It's the bane of many parents' lives, making sure their children leave the house, well, looking like children would be a good start. Our parents panel is taking on this thorny issue today, the sexualisation of kids. Please welcome Linda Sutherland from the National Council of Women, stylist down in Christchurch, Stephanie Rundle. Good morning, Stephanie.
Good morning,
and
Hayden.
youth worker Brooke Turner. G'day, Brooke. How you going?
Morning, Hayden.
All right, who wants to take this one off first? What does it mean, sexualisation of children? Linda, I think you can probably kick it off.
Sexualisation of children is really training children so that they perceive themselves to be sexual objects and measured purely on physical terms, physical attractiveness.
So their worth is judged by how attractive they are?
Exactly.
As kids? As
kids, yes, as children.
Is this what you're seeing? Brooke, what are you seeing? Because you're a youth worker, right? So you're on the ground.
What we're seeing is at a young adolescent age, a lot of young girls who are seeing their identity as sexual objects. They see success as being sexy. And so by the time they're hitting 13, 14, what's being portrayed to them through the media, through advertising, is if I'm sexy enough, I'll make it in the world.
What sort of ages are we? Sorry, where you go, Stephanie?
I was just going to say, I think one of the things here too is to look at the definition of attractiveness. It doesn't have to actually mean sexy. I think that's one of the things I try and teach my children, is they can still be beautiful and attractive on the inside as well as looking nice on the outside. It doesn't have to be sexy. I think we need to make that really clear distinction with our children.
Yes.
What's the big issue here? What can this lead to? Why should we be worried about, you know, it's kids, right? They don't really understand. Who cares what they look like, what they dress?
Well, slowly over time, that the influence of sexualisation builds up and it starts to determine how they perceive their own worth, their self-esteem, and that then places them at risk if, let's say, they go through life, reach those teenage years where they have defined themselves purely on their attractiveness and sexual appeal to other children, whether male or female, and adults even. And that can then place these kids at risk of such things as becoming anorexic when they can't actually live up to the standards that they've set in for themselves. It can increase the likelihood of drinking alcohol, self-harm, and, you know, really the worst end of the scale is groom them to be more at risk of going into a domestic violence relationship when they're adults.
Because they have low self-worth, because they think they have to be the next Pamela Anderson or what have you. What about if let's just say kids, I don't know, they ingest a lot of this media early. Is there any evidence that they may, this is for anyone by the way, they may have sexual intercourse earlier?
Well, I guess what I'm seeing after 13 years of being in youth work is that the level of promiscuity amongst adolescent girls is far higher than it was 13 years ago. I've been in youth work for 13 years, so that's 3 generations of high school teens. And although I think the issue's been around us forever, it has definitely, the accessibility to it has increased somewhat. And what we're seeing is that lower age groups are beginning to experiment sexually. So whereas maybe 5 years ago, you know, you'd be looking at having kind of the safe sex talks to teenagers at the age of 15, you're now looking at talking to adolescents at 11 or 12 about those sorts of things.
I can relate to that. I've got 4 children. My oldest son's nearly 11, my next son's 9, I've got a nearly 7-year-old daughter and a 5-year-old daughter, and I've had to have the conversation with my oldest son already, just so that because he's asking questions and wants to know. And when it comes to girls and daughters, I think, and actually all children, I think we as parents need to take responsibility for our children. We need to look at the movies they're watching. I've just had a crackdown in my house and said to my children, there's no movies watched that aren't a G. Because why would I want my children to watch something that's rated or that requires parental guidance? I need my children to be seeing things that are for children. I think there's a real problem with them watching things that are far too old for them on the television. Parents need to keep a really close handle on what their children are seeing visually, because that can translate into their behaviour as well.
What do your kids want, Stephanie? What do they want for Christmas, for birthday, you know, that sort of thing? Are they after, you know, mini skirts and fishnet stockings and...
Well, my daughter, Scarlett, this morning in the car on the way here, I said, Scarlett, what do you want for your birthday? She turns 7 on the 1st of December. And this is her birthday list, New Zealand. She wants a Snow White dress. She wants a Snow White doll. She wants some Tinkerbell high heel shoes. She wants her ears pierced, which she won't be having until she's over 10. She wants her nails painted with crystals, and she wants a Bratz doll. Now, there's only about half of the things on that list which I would actually be buying for her. I don't like children having the ears pierced too young. I'm a bit old-fashioned about that. High heels are out, I say, until you get into your teenage years. And the nails, well, if I supervise and the nail polish doesn't go everywhere, I might squeak that one in. The rest of them would be okay. The Bratz doll, I have a problem with some of the dolls. I think the clothing provided for some of those dolls is a bit OTT. I'm being very conservative here. When I was a child, my mother never even brought me a Barbie doll. Now, my daughters do have Barbie dolls. She didn't buy them because she thought they were a bit skanky, to be honest. I don't actually agree with that now, but I think, you know, there's some things there that we need to look at for our daughters.
Brooke, you're big on this, aren't you, about parents? Because we are awash with media, billboard stuff that we can't. There's one thing telling your kids to say you can't watch that movie, but what if they're in the car and they're looking out the window or they're walking past the TV? What are we going to do there?
Well, I think the biggest thing is not abdicating our responsibility as parents and actually saying, I'm the chief educator of my child, I'm the chief influence on their life, or myself and my partner, and therefore, if I notice that they're seeing something, I'm going to help educate them about what they're seeing, what that image means, what it portrays. And I think often we abdicate responsibility. You know, we put our child in front of the TV and they've watched an hour of adverts and we haven't sat down with them and actually filtered what they've watched and then talked to them about it. And you can't future-proof it. We can't wrap our kids up in cotton wool and cause them not to see these images or not to watch adverts on TV, or even in episodes of programs that we think are G-rated, a comment here or a scene there. But what we've got to do as parents is say, we are the key influence on our child's life, and you know, they look to us first and foremost for our advice, for our affirmation, for our support, and that's a great thing. You
don't know what you're going to get if you let the TV do the parenting. Hey guys, we've just got to pause here. We're going to call this halftime. We'll be back with some practical tips for parents on how to deal with this issue after the break. All right, back with the Parents Panel. We're discussing children growing up too fast. It's a bit of a harrowing for me to know, a little girl. Stephanie, we'll start with you down in Christchurch. You're a stylist. You run fashion shows for all sorts of ages. What are some tips that you have for parents in general whose kids may want to grow up too fast? Because they all want to, you know...
Well, the first thing I think is you're the parent. Be the parent. I mean, you can be your child's friend, but you really need to hold that control. You're the parent. You hold the money. You hold the purse strings, so you can control what you buy for your daughter to wear or your son. First thing is, I think, there's not too much midriff showing. So watch that your daughter doesn't have a load of midriff showing. That's not appropriate for a young child. Keep the short skirts fun, girly and flouncy rather than short, tight, black and figure hugging. And teach your daughter over the age of 5 to get changed in the changing rooms at the swimming pool. Even though it's very tempting for us as parents to want to change them on poolside because it's quicker and easier, they need to learn when it's time to change in the changing rooms. I also say keep them in youthful, bright, exciting, happy colours rather than black. Black can be very adult and sometimes has those sexual connotations. No high heels until they're teenagers, unless they're dressing up obviously at home, but not wearing them out. They really can be tacky, as well as they can sexualise children as well. And be really sensitive to the developing breasts of your preteen daughter. You know, if she does need to cover up the nipple buds, do look at that. Don't put her out in a tight see-through top where people start looking. I mean, she doesn't need a bra until she has breasts, but just be conscious of that. And also watch the makeup as well. Teach them how to put makeup on appropriately once they get to their teenage years, not when they're a little girl. Hey, Brooke, you've got a 2-year-old, and even she wants to be like an adult, right? My little girl picks up the telephone because we pick up the telephone. She wants to be an adult and talk on the phone. Do you take her out, or do you do things to give her that outlet?
That's right. Well, as a youth worker, a lot of my work is on the weekend, so I have Mondays with my daughter. It's a great privilege as a father. My wife's out at work, and so I always take her to a cafe, and she sits up like a big girl, and I have a coffee and she has a fluffy. Sometimes I have to admit much to her mother's dismay, she gets a little bit of the dregs of my coffee. She says, you know, she's the only 2-year-old in New Zealand who likes coffee without sugar. But, you know, I mean, children, they want to be adult, and so in a wholesome environment, that's great. And she sits up in the cafe on a chair, not in a high chair, drinks her fluffy, and people comment in the cafe and she feels all good about herself, but it's an appropriate expression. And I think what parents need to look for is appropriate expressions. If we spend our time trying to protect our children and tell our children all the things that they can't do, we become a negative influence on them, even though we're trying to protect them from negative influences. So for parents, it's really important that we try to, what I talk about is sandwich, you know, compliment, correction, compliment. And if you're always thinking in the sandwich kind of analogy, then for every correction you give your child, you're always giving them 2 compliments. And that's huge for children.
Okay, here's one. I just want to throw this one out there. So you're walking down the street with your daughter and you see some other girls who are a little older coming the other way and they're wearing all the clothes that you don't want your daughter to wear. And you're obviously, your daughter's looking at them, you're looking at them. What do you say to them? Do you say, don't ever dress like that? Or do you say, gosh, they look silly? Or what do you say?
Well, I think you have to be quite thoughtful in your approach to it. So let's say that they're wearing clothes that are, you know, are supposed to be sexy. I think I'd be tempted to say to my daughter, oh gosh, that looks a bit cold. Putting it in those sort of simple kid terms of why it doesn't work, and yeah, that's a real tough one. I mean, sometimes even distracting the child away from noticing those kids.
Don't make a big deal about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'd probably put the attention back onto my daughter too. I might say, oh, you look good, you know, you look lovely today. This is a lovely little dress or whatever she's wearing. I think the distraction's a big one there, because my daughters definitely both do that. I mean, I'm in the fashion world. They see fashion around them all the time at home. There's lots of things going on for me at work. And they do that. They do look. And I think it's bringing it back to them. You know, this is, you know, you're a beautiful person. You know, focusing on who they are rather than just on how they look.
And I think a big part of that is actually discovering the strengths of your child.
Yeah.
So discovering that they're really good with sports, you know, or they're got a knack for music, or they're really interested in literature or something like that. And so there's a strength that they're building into that becomes the basis of their self-esteem. And then even if the media is drawing its attention to, you know, sex, and advertising is using sex in a way to try to sell its products. Our child, they are more interested in getting on a sports field and playing netball than they are in determining what they're going to wear. They're more excited about seeing the Silver Ferns win the gold medal at the Commonwealth Games than they are about watching New Zealand's next top hot model, you know, at 6 years old. And so I think it's important to look at the strengths of young people, and I think that's the danger for children, that in this sexualised world, we say success is being sexy. And clearly we know, the 4 of us here today, we all do different things and we're successful in our different fields. And our children need to hear that message loud and clear at a young age.
Hey, thank you very much for your time today, guys. I'm afraid we're out of time, but it's been educational. And I don't feel so bad about it now. I feel good.